We're going to talk about a story that's almost hard to believe. It's about a miracle drug that built a corporate giant. And then, well, watched it all come crashing down.
So, that's the big question, right? How on earth does a company with a product this revolutionary lose 400 times billion dollars? The answer, it turns out, is a pretty brutal lesson in business, all about competition and timing.
Okay, so to really get how the crash happened, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to understand the revolution this drug kicked off.
All right, get this. The science here is just wild. The key ingredient, this thing called a GLP-1, was first found in the venom of a Gila monster. Yeah, a lizard. I'm not kidding. What it does is it basically tricks your brain. It mimics a hormone that says, hey, you're full. And just like that, it shuts down your appetite.
And you can imagine the market for a drug like this, it's not just big, it's absolutely colossal. I mean, think about it. Back in 2022, almost half, 43% of adults in the US were obese. If you're a business, you literally couldn't dream up a bigger potential customer base.
So, fast forward to 2021. This Danish company, Novo Nordisk, steps onto the scene with a drug called Wegovy. It was the very first of its kind to get approved just for weight loss, and people immediately started calling it a miracle.
And for a while there, man, it really seemed like they had cracked the code, like they found the ultimate cheat for business success. This was the beginning of the era of the $600 billion drug.
The growth was just insane. Their revenue more than doubled in only 4 years. To put that in perspective, that's a jump from about $20 billion to $45 billion in US dollars. And this incredible explosion was pretty much all because of these new weight loss drugs. And at its absolute peak, the company was worth a mind-boggling $640 billion.
Just to give you some perspective on that number, they became more valuable than LVMH, the luxury empire that owns Louis Vuitton and Tiffany. A pharmaceutical company from Denmark was suddenly bigger than the kings of high-end luxury. Wow.
But you know how these stories go. Just when they reached the very top of the mountain, the empire struck back. Competition was on the horizon, and it was coming for them, fast.
So let's meet the main rival in our story, the American pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly. They were watching Novo Nordisk's incredible success, and you better believe they wanted a piece of that action.
And here's the kicker. They didn't just show up with a competing drug. They showed up with a better one. When they put them head-to-head in studies, their drug, Zepbound, led to a 20% average weight loss. Wegovy, only 14%. The simple fact was, the new kid on the block was just more effective. But Eli Lilly wasn't even their only problem. Oh no, a second and maybe even sneakier threat was starting to bubble up. Let's call it the copycat crisis.
So here's how this went down. Wegovy was so popular that it created an official drug shortage, according to the FDA. And that shortage triggered this really specific legal loophole. It basically allows pharmacies to compound, which is a fancy way of saying create their own copycat versions, of a drug, even if it's still under patent. And what really threw gasoline on this fire was the massive price difference. I mean, Donald Trump even told this story about a friend of his who bought the drug in London for just $88, while in New York, it cost $1,300. When you're looking at a price gap that huge, yeah, people are going to start looking for other options. So you've got this perfect storm, right? A competitor with a better product and cheap copycats flooding the market. All of a sudden, this titan that looked completely unbeatable was in some very, very deep trouble.
And the fallout was fast. You just have to look at the weekly prescriptions in the US. Zepbound shot past Wegovy, grabbing the majority of the market share. Just like that, the king was losing its crown, and it was happening in the biggest, most important market on the planet.
And this brings us right back to that question we started with. The result of this perfect storm? A $400 billion loss in value. Just gone, wiped out. And it wasn't just numbers on a screen. There was a real human cost. The company announced it was planning to cut 9,000 jobs. That's 11% of their entire global workforce, all in an effort to just stop the bleeding.
So, where do they go from here? Is there a comeback plan for the company that literally started this whole revolution?
Well, analysts think they have a three-part plan in the works. First up, get the FDA to really crack down on all those copycats. Step 2, launch a version of Wegovy that's a pill, not an injection, which would be way more convenient. And finally, step 3, release a brand new next-generation drug called CagriSema, which they hope will be even better than the competition's.
And that's where we're at. It leaves us with this huge question.
We're watching a multi-billion-dollar war over weight loss play out, and the first major battle is over. The big question now is, can the pioneer, the company that started it all, actually fight its way back to reclaim the throne?